T. Welcome to the command post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your commander-in-chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So, wanted to come at you with a quick video, and it's less about the actual title of the video, Washington talking to veteran tight end Zach Ertz. We'll address that here in a second. More about the big picture. And I want to expand the lens because I kind of gave you a little bit of insight into what your mindset should be, but I was really limiting that focus to that of head coach Dan Quinn. And I think this conversation that we're about to have forces us to expand that lens to include all the coaches on the staff, and especially Cliff Kingsbury on the offensive side and these coordinators in particular, right? So let's talk about Zach Ertz first. When you get to a certain age, you're no longer able to go by a cool nickname, right? When you're 12, Zach is a cool nickname. Yeah, you know. When you're 19, Zach's a cool guy. When you're 26, hey man, Zach's a really solid dude. When you're 33, you're no longer Zach, you're Zachary, okay? And I'm not interested in Zachary Ertz unless I kid, okay? I'm kidding, all right? He can be called Zach, Zachary, it doesn't matter. Right? He's done nothing to me other than be a Philadelphia Eagle for years and torment us. Thus, I should call him Zachary just off the strength of that, just off principle, but I'm not going to do that. He's done nothing to me to this point of late. But I don't want Zach Ertz here in Washington unless you tell me that he's not going to stop me, or us, I should say. It's not going to stop the Commanders from pursuing a young, talented tight end in the draft or still in free agency. Again, he's going to be a very cheap, affordable option. I've talked to you about this already. A lot of the moves that are going to be made, you're not going to like them because they're going to be just like this. Not necessarily a 33-year-old tight end, but a number of these moves are going to be guys that you're not thinking about. We weren't talking about Zach Ertz. Nobody brought up Zachary Ertz's name. But that's a cheap 1 year, 3.5, 1 year, $4.5 million contract. It makes sense. And as much as they've talked about, we are going to put this offense together with all these brilliant minds that we've assembled, like we're talking about the Avengers here, it's still Cliff Kingsbury's offense at its core. And he's still going to have principles that he's got, you know, that go way back, that can be traced all the way back to his origins as a air raid, you know, offensive coordinator. And one of the innovative minds that really took air raid and ran with it. There's still going to be principles of that. They're going to, you know, adjust it and tailor it to the talent that they have. I don't disagree with that, but don't expect a full-blown brand new offense. Still Cliff Kingsbury, right? So it makes sense to bring in a guy that knows the offense and knows, you know, aspects of it and can help teach others, a veteran. We know these are things that get done when new staffs come in. They like to bring in guys. I talked about Rivera doing it with Thomas Davis. He tried to do the same thing with Greg Olsen, right? And Olsen ended up going to Seattle instead. So you know that's a thing that gets done. When you go back to when Adam Peters was in San Francisco, Shanahan brought in Pierre Garçon. Garçon was past the prime of his career when they went out and signed him to that massive 5-year deal. Okay? But he still just came off a 1,000-yard season with Washington, I think, in 2016, if I'm not mistaken. That last year, him and Deshaun were there. But he was past his prime. Good years in Indy, excellent years in Washington. And now he was at the tail end of his career, and that's what they got. They got tail end of the career, Pierre Garçon. But you're willing to bring in a veteran guy that you trust, who knows your scheme, as you try to implement what it is to play for this coach in this system, in this new destination. Now, again, if you tell me they're moving on from John Bates and Zachary Ertz is taking his place and we're still going to go out and draft a young tight end, I'm okay with that. You tell me we're moving on from Cole Turner and Zachary Ertz is taking his spot and we're still going to draft a young tight end, I'm okay with that. or none of the above. You tell me you're drafting Zachary Ertz. Nothing's guaranteed to him. You sign him to a 1-year deal with minimal guarantees. You still draft a guy at the tight end position. And then you get to camp. You let everybody battle it out. And if 33-year-old Zachary Ertz isn't cutting it, you cut him. I'm okay with that too. But what I'm not okay with is you Logan Thomasing in us and literally bringing in Zach Ertz as if he's going to clean up the tight end position as a whole at 33 years old, and we go into the season with another old, slow-footed tight end that doesn't give us a true advantage at the position. That's what I don't want to do. I'd like to think that they're smart enough to not do that, but again, I don't really know, and this is the beauty of what we're seeing is we don't know what the hell is going to happen now, do we? And I kind of like it. I'll say this. I'm a bit anxious, but I'm intrigued. I'm all in, so I'm intrigued, and I want to see what it looks like. But that's how I feel about Zachary Ertz. Okay? 33-year-old tight end, best football's way behind him, not really interested in making him the primary guy at the position. Spare me, please. We just did that for 3 years with Logan Thomas. I'd like to go in a different direction, and if that's what they're going to do, bring him in, but still go after a young tight end, I'm all for it. Nothing like a veteran. I told you, they're going to infuse some veterans. I've been telling you guys all along, hey, this guy's too old. This guy's too old. Oh, I don't know if I want a 29-year-old. Oh, I don't know if I... They're going to bring in some veterans. They can't run from every veteran. They can't run from every 29, 30, 31, 32-year-old. They can't do that. Because if you do that, then it's the blind leading the blind. That's really what we had in Washington, is we had young guys trying to teach young guys how to be professionals. And at some point, you do have to infuse a veteran here and there and there and there and there to show the young guys what it means to be a pro, how to prepare, how to take care of your body, how to get through the rigors of a 17 now game NFL season. It used to be 16. Now it's 17. These guys are coming from college where most of them don't play more than 12 or 13 at a time. Unless you're playing for a powerhouse school that goes to the postseason, plays in a championship game, then you're playing 15 games if you make it all the way to the national championship. But there are only 2 teams in the nation that's going to do that every year. And some teams don't even have a conference championship. So more likely than not, you're playing 12, maybe 13 games. Then you go from that to 17 now? It's a big jump. So, again, I'm expecting some veterans along the way. And this is why I want to expand the lens. So big picture, what does this mean? Okay, this report came from Peter Schrager of Fox Sports. He does the show on NFL Network, the Good Morning Football show on NFL Network. So, he's all over the place. But this is from Peter Schrager. So it's a source that is tapped into the league, right? So and talking to Zach Ertz doesn't mean that he's going to sign here. It means they had a conversation. And so understand what talking means, right? That's again, move that to the side now. Move that aside. What I want to talk about is big picture. What this news of Washington talking to Zachary Ertz means. One, don't look at age as a deterrent. Now, I think it still is a deterrent, but don't rule a guy out solely because he's 28. He's going to be 29 before the season starts. Like I've been doing. Don't do that. This tells us doesn't matter. And I've said there are going to be a lot of guys that you're not thinking about, that I'm not thinking about, that could end up here because there are going to be a lot of 1-2 year deals. And guys like Zachary Ertz should be on that list, right? But here's the really big takeaway here for me. I've been narrowing my focus from an age perspective, but more importantly, from a talent perspective to younger guys. And I've only talked about guys that have a tie to Dan Quinn. For instance, I talked about Dorrance Armstrong coming potentially from Dallas, right? And he's talked very fondly about Jaron Kearse, who is a free agent, but he's like 30 years old or whatever, 30, 31. But don't rule him out, right? We're talking about all these safeties. They're not going to re-sign Cam Curl. Jaron Kearse is not going to cost you a lot of money. He's a guy that is very versatile, who Dan Quinn loves. Obviously, he's talked about him numerous times, unsolicited, about how versatile he was in the defensive scheme. And so don't be surprised if he brings another guy. And I've been kind of honing in on Dan Quinn and the guys that have played for him in the past and how those guys can end up coming here. But what I'm trying to tell you is don't forget about other coaches on this staff. Other guys that are well-traveled, that have bumped into this guy or that guy when he was coaching here or there, including Cliff Kingsbury, who was in Arizona. Don't rule out guys that Cliff Kingsbury has coached. Zach Ertz, case in point. Guy he coached, had some success with. Don't rule out Cliff Kingsbury's connections and guys that he's come across and crossed paths with. Maybe those guys might be in play too. So you need to widen your net a bit. Age is not something that should totally rule guys out. And also start cross-referencing some of these lower-level free agents. Guys that may be past their prime. Guys that may be off the beaten path that have a connection to Quinn, to Cliff Kingsbury, to the offensive line coach, O-line Bobby Johnson, to, the wide receivers coach. Well, Bobby Ingram's been here, but still. Et cetera, et cetera. You get where I'm going with this, right? To Anthony Lynn, the running backs coach. And it might not just be a running back, right? So keep that stuff in mind as well. That's the big picture to me, is that the net has to be widened a bit. I've cast a very narrow focused net, and I'm still thinking with my Rivera lens. Don't want old players because Rivera was scared of old players when he got here, and everybody that they signed was relatively young. And I was still thinking about guys that made sense from, former first round pick, that kind of thing. And I still think those guys are in play, by the way. But don't rule out 31 or 32-year-old. So a guy like Austin Eckler, don't rule him out. Like, I know John Perez, my guy, has been banging the table for a guy like Austin Eckler for years. Don't rule out Austin Eckler because he's going to be 29 here shortly. Austin Eckler on a 2-year deal, and you can get out after one, might be something he may be willing to do. Because I don't know if there's going to be a sizzling hot market for Austin Eckler. There wasn't one last year when he was looking for a trade. We'll see. But that's the big picture that I want you guys to start thinking about. And I'm going to readjust the way that I look at it for tomorrow's show, because I had this focus for tomorrow's show in terms of the free agents that I thought this team would go after. And maybe I have to now cast a wider net. When you start talking about 33-year-old Zachary Ertz, I've got to cast a wider net. So you should too. And I told you this already. You're probably going, I keep trying to warn you guys about what this is going to look like. And you guys, I don't think you really truly understand what a rebuild, or in the words of DQ, a recalibration looks like. As they try to find their north, they're going to find a lot of cheap options to fill up the roster too. So keep that in mind as well. We only got 9 draft picks, guys. You can't solve every need on a roster with 9 draft picks. As much as some of you think the draft is going to solve all of our needs. We got 9. We don't have 29 draft picks, but we have 29 roster spots. You got to fill them somehow. There'll be 9 guys they draft. There'll be another, 12 or so that they bring in as undrafted free agents. You still got to sign some guys in free agency though. You get 90 spots on this roster thing going into camp. You get 90 of them. We got a lot of roster spots to fill up. My guess is this roster has about anywhere from 40 to 50 vacancies right now, is my guess, when you talk about 90-man roster. Got a lot of work to do. And it starts in free agency. So, big picture, widen your net. Widen your net. It's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the command post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. If anything big happens, you'll see this face all up in your space. But until then, I'll see you on Thursday night. Big show. Mark your calendars. 9:30 p. Matter of fact, make it 9 o'clock. We're going to go a little bit earlier because I expect the show to be a little bit longer. Let's go 9 o'clock. Thursday night. Here on the Louie T Network. Until then, you guys, have a good one. Take care.
LouieTeeNetwork.